Hello, welcome to my demonstration, a postcard from Dorset. My design today is inspired by the beautiful Jurassic Coast, which runs from Studland in the east, a distance of just under 100 miles, through to Exmouth in Devon. So we're starting here with a goldfish bowl. These bowls are very useful for putting things into, such as calla lilies or tulips, or one big bloom looks very effective. However, it's a memory to me of the glass fishing floats that the fishermen used before the plastic ones came in. So we're going to do our design on top of the glass bowl. And in here I have a half block of the Oasis Noir, and into the bottom of the bowl I've made a little beach. So I've put some sand and a couple of pieces of sea glass and a bit of grit and shells and a small piece of driftwood. I've pot taped this into what they call a square round, because it's square at the bottom and round at the top, and fixed it with pot fix. So I was thinking of the kind of textures that you get at the beach, and I thought about the kelp and the seaweeds and also the waves. So we've got here some Aspidistra elatea. Now normally Aspidistra leaves are by nature quite floppy, and I want to make them into waves. So what I've done is I have the leaf, I've put a wire along the back of the leaf, and then I have run some pot tape over the back of the leaf, and I've taken it right the way down, which then gives the leaf some structure. And once it's wired like this, you can pretty much change it into any shape that you want to. Let's just get rid of that bit of wire. So we're making waves. So I've bent the Aspidistra leaf into shape. The Aspidistra is my kind of plant because it thrives on neglect. I have a plant in my garden and it stays out in the garden most of the summer. I bring it in the winter not because it needs to get into the warm. An Aspidistra will actually go down to a temperature of approximately -12. So they are quite frost hardy. But if you leave it out in the winter, it does get a little bit windswept, and we're going to add some waves to the back as well. When you're putting the wires in with the pot tape, do remember that pot tape doesn't like sticking to the wet, and so consequently you must make sure that your leaves are very dry and that you haven't put leaf shine on them before you try to put the pot tape on. I'm just folding another one over there. And then we're going to fold a couple of these in and fix them with the staple gun to add in and take the design down through the centre. The aspidistra leaf is one of the few plants, I think, that has appeared in a book and had a song written about it. Of course, that was Keep the Aspidistra Flying by George Orwell, and The Biggest Aspidistra in the World, which was a popular Gracie Fields song. I'm also going to put in some of these Fats Hedera leaves to the sides and taking them a little bit further down. Fats Hedera being a mix of the Fatsia and Hedera plants. You can walk the Jurassic Coast by means of the Southwest Coast Path, and you can see all sorts of beautiful rock formations and features along the way. So we're going to start building up the design, and I have one more foliage here, which is a pot plant, which is Phlebodium Blue Star. I keep this on my kitchen windowsill. It's got a lovely blue colour, a bit like the eucalyptus, but I think it has quite a funky sort of shape, a bit more like seaweeds. So my first flower to go in here is beautiful. A lot of people have these in their garden at the moment. A delicious hydrangea. Hydra from the Greek meaning water. They are very thirsty flowers, and to keep them hydrated, a good idea if they're looking a bit sad is to put them in the bath, right in above their heads in water. The blue mophead hydrangea is pH sensitive, or pink. It goes blue in an acid soil and it will go pink if your soil is alkaline. So my next flower to go in here, beautiful delphiniums. All parts of a delphinium are poisonous. So if you're using delphiniums in arranging, do please make sure that you wash your hands after you've used them. Take that one. Right down through the front there. I've kept my foliages quite shiny and smooth in texture because all the flowers in this design are multi-headed and quite fussy sort of flowers. So really, to contrast in texture, I've kept those smoother. I'm just going to put a couple of leaves in the back while it's turned round. To cover up the oasis. The Jurassic Coast is a World Heritage Site and it has been since 2001. It features, among other things, as I'm sure you're aware, the beautiful coastline at Lyme Regis, where Mary Anning did her fossil hunting. But please be aware, if you are visiting, that it is very dangerous to walk underneath the cliffs. So also into this design we are putting some of these lovely agapanthus. These aren't quite out yet, but when they come out they'll be a glorious blue. Agapanthus are in all our gardens at the moment in this sort of area, and it certainly reminds me of the beach. I have mine in a gravel garden and it links very nicely. I'll just put the bigger one of those. I'm just going to swap these over. This one is a smaller head, and if you're arranging things, generally speaking, the smaller flowers go to the edge and the bigger towards the centre. We quite often go to the beach on a Sunday morning when not many people are about, and last week we went to Swanage. I have fond memories of Swanage, or my parents have fond memories of Swanage, as they took me there when I was a small child. However, at the time I don't think they probably were fond memories, because they took me on the beach and I screamed and said it was dirty. So they took me in the sea to wash it off, and I screamed even louder. So they took me back onto the prom, and I spent most of my time in Swanage conducting the band. I hasten to add I was only about 4 at the time. And then my final flower, this lovely Alchemilla mollis. I love the way the rain and the dew settles in the little leaves on Alchemilla in the mornings. Alchemilla mollis is a good example of a flower that is a herb and a weed, which, let's face it, a weed is only a flower that's growing in a place that you don't want it to be. It features in Culpeper's Herbalist, Complete Herbalist, and is a remedy for all sorts of things, as well as adding a real zing of lime green to arrangements. You can dry it, and likewise the hydrangea can be dried. Let's put this one bit here towards onto the back, and it just lifts the colour of that arrangement. So finally we are on the beach. We've been to the seaside. I am a complete scavenger at the seaside, I must admit. I love picking up bits of driftwood and shells and all sorts of things like that, sea glass especially. And here I've got a few shells that I've put onto kebab sticks. I've glued them on with a glue gun. And we're just going to add those in. I've also covered the white of the kebab stick up with some gutta percha. As the white is a little stark and does tend to shine through quite a lot. Just push that one in a little bit further. So I hope you've enjoyed your walk along the coast with me today, and stay safe, and I hope we'll meet again soon. Thank you. This is the first time I've done this design. Having stood back from it and looked at it, I can see that the hydrangea is far too dominant and it needs something more bold either side of it. If I was to do this design again, I'd probably put something like a pale yellow lily either side of the hydrangea, which would add a volumetric contrasting shape to the hydrangea, and then put some more agapanthus threaded through that. Well, here I thought I'd just show you a couple of little things. If you're not too confident at flower arranging, or you're more a craft person than a flower arranger, here are two things that you could do to link in the flowers to your designs, and to also use some of your stash of driftwood and pebbles and things like that, shells that you've collected from the beach. So here we have a wreath ring which I've made. I used the base of a wire ring. This one is a little smaller than the one I've used, and I've arranged my driftwood on it and glued it on using a glue gun. I always work on a piece of the baking parchment, because then if any glue spills through to the other side, you can always peel it off. It's not actually permanently then glued to your table. So, having arranged my driftwood and glued it in place, I then added some shells and a little bit of reindeer moss. One trend that's coming in a great deal at the moment is dried flowers and dried grasses, especially a lot of the grasses and flowers people are bleaching. Now, a lot of flowers will dry very easily. I've used statice, which is this one I'm growing in my garden at the moment, is the pink, the yellow and the blue. Lavender will dry very easily. Limonium is this one here, the little white one, which has dried very well. And Eurydium, the sea thistle, will dry. Also, I have here some poppy seed heads, which will also dry very well. As they dry though, you need to put the heads in a bag or something like that as they dry, because they create a salt and pepper sort of sprinkler effect and will put poppy seeds everywhere if you're not careful. And then all I've done is simply put a little piece of silk ribbon through the top to hang it up. This arrangement I've made using some of my driftwood and some string. I've threaded onto the piece of driftwood some of my lucky stones, I call them, the ones that you find that have got holes go all the way through, and some salt dough fish and a little seahorse. Seahorses are found in and around the sea at Poole and are protected species. I've then got two little jars here that are the size of the jars that you get your herbs and spices in, and they're ideal for just putting a few flowers in and hanging up. Both of these designs are completely recyclable, and this one, especially when you've had enough of the flowers or they've died, then you can simply replenish it with some new ones. So I hope I've given you just a few ideas here of things to use. A tip: when you're bringing things like driftwood into the house, do try and I put them in the bath with some bleach just to clean them first, because quite often things like this are full of worms and woodworm type worms and bugs and all sorts of things that if you bring it all straight into the house you could be unleashing on your furniture, which is probably not a good plan. So I tend to soak it overnight in the bath with some bleach and then leave it, if it's a lovely sunny day, out in the sun to dry. Some of you may be wondering, what with all the driftwood and the hydrangeas in the bath, and sometimes I have to admit I do soak willow in there as well, do we wash in this household? Well, you'll be pleased to know the answer is yes, we do. We're fortunate enough to have a separate shower. So I hope I've given you a couple of ideas here that you may want to use or adapt to your own liking. Thanks.